Okay, we're gonna go to the individual questions. So it's me first with you, Mary. You ready?
I guess.
So you're doing great, man. All right. So this is. I know you're gonna. I know you've already read it. And you're gonna. I'm sure you looked at it and were like, oh, but I really need. I'm so excited to hear your answer on this. All right. So you are seen as a trailblazer by many, Mary. You just are. I know you don't own that. You don't want that mantle. Fine. I got it. You're one of the most humble leaders. That was a massive big shot I've been around in my life. But you are a trailblazer. Your intro tells us that, like from whence you came to what you achieved, and even to be asked back to lead a brigade. What was it, 10 years from separation? And I was at your first retirement at Bragg, if you remember that. Like I stood on the dais with you and watched the
Yep.
82nd Airborne Band march you out of your career. It was so amazing to witness real time. And then I hear 10 years later that you get brought back. Like that's massive. I don't know anyone that's happened to. And I've done a lot after I got out with veterans and units with Defenders of Freedom and US Bank's Private Serve program. I don't know anyone like you, ma'am. So you are a trailblazer. So through those experiences coming up out of the wax into call it the real-time army, company command, or the town, all of that. Like, what were the biggest challenges and what were some of the opportunities? Because not everything's bad, but like, what are the two things that one each maybe that you remember and how you got around them?
Well, probably the biggest challenge was coming in the Army in 1973 and being part of that initial push of women into the branches. Uh, I ended up, there were 7 of us that went to the MP school. And then after that, 2 of us went to Korea. One ended up in Seoul and I ended up in Daegu. Now, that's important because the only other female officers that were in Korea at the time were nurses. And I was in Daegu. There were 2 female nurses and myself. And there were not a whole lot of men who cared to be mentors, coaches, teachers. I think they looked at women in the Army and in the branches as an experiment that would go away quickly, and that we would leave them to be back in their maleness. Uh, but interestingly enough, in Korea, there was a young buck sergeant who was sat across the hall from me in his office, and he took his job very seriously. And he probably taught me more about being an officer than any other officer I ran into for the next probably 10 years. Because after that, it was always a fight. Everywhere you went, you were an anomaly. There were still very few of us out there doing jobs. I kept fighting to go to line companies. People who went to the field went to war as opposed to administrative jobs, and not very well received. And my second tour my first tour in Hawaii, I met a guy named Larry Brady who looked at me as an officer and not a female. And he treated me with respect, and he gave me a lot of the tough love. You need to work on this. You need to do better at this. You're really good at this. And he took me on in jobs that, even in Hawaii, that were not traditionally female. But then he gave me the greatest opportunity in the world. He went to command the 503rd MP Battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which was right in the throes of becoming an airborne unit. And he selected me to be his S3, or his operations officer. Well, first of all, there had not ever been a female S3 in a line unit in the United States Army at that time, let alone in the premier airborne. We don't even acknowledge that women exist outside of the home environment, and made me very successful. And frankly, he's probably the premier mentor that I had. And Patrick knows him, and Annette knows him. He was the brigade commander when we were in Saudi Arabia. I worked for Larry 3 times and never ceased to learn from him and never ceased to be given opportunities. I think about all those years of having to each and every time prove myself because I'm a woman. And Annette and I talked about this last night. Is females in the Army, the reputation does not precede you. You have to prove yourself every time you go someplace. You're a new entity no matter what. And it takes a lot of that grit that Annette talked about to do that. But I think that was the biggest challenge. That and the fact that as a woman coming in the Army in 1973, I was competing with guys who had been in ROTC for 4 years or OCS. And I was a fresh out of college, know nothing second lieutenant. And I went to WAC officer orientation where they taught me how to wear my uniform and serve tea. So it was, I was ill prepared to be in a line unit in Korea and had to learn very fast. So
Rachel, do you see why she's seen as a trailblazer, even though she won't admit it? And Annette, I'm not going to speak for you. I never would think I could, ma'am, at all. But officers like Annette, and even my own daughter, who joined later, that Annette and Mary both helped with letter writing and navigating her into service, had the careers they did because Mary and maybe a few small handful of other people went first. Yeah. I mean, that's what makes you a trailblazer, Mary. I know it's hard to talk about, but I appreciate that answer, and it's very impactful. And that wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things, right? And you're a legend. You're a legend. You are. Like, I got to go to your Hall of Fame induction. Like, for everyone, I got to see her retire, and then I got to go up to Leonard Wood and watch her get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like, and now I'm staring at you at this podcast talking about your amazing career. I can just stop now. Rachel, I'm not coming back. I'm done. Mary, thank you for that.
And thank you for sharing how that felt, right? Because I think that, I mean, obviously you took a tremendous amount of courage, and I'm sure parts of it were uncertain, right? And actually dangerous, right? That you didn't have the right training. But others may look and say, oh, she's a superhero, right? I'm sure it was fine. But it's okay to admit that we're all human, right? And things are hard, but that's where that grit comes from, right? We can overcome it. And the next time we have to approach something hard, we have that muscle memory,